Hey, if you're like me, you're willing to say you need help. Maybe you need help with a drinking problem. Maybe you have cancer. Maybe you have rebellious children. Maybe you have a marriage that's not going well. Maybe you're struggling at work. Maybe you need a job change. Maybe your friendships are not going well, but you're willing to say you need help. So the question today is, how do you get help? How do you find help? If you have a problem, if you have a situation and you're looking for help, you know you need help. Can I give you 2 suggestions on how to get help, where to get help? This is Walk and Talk 121. It's August 4th. It's a beautiful day. It's been raining all morning. But we finally got some clear skies, at least no rain. We're in the high 70s or the low 80s by now, probably maybe even high 70s. So you're like me. You go through life and then there's a zigzag, there's a detour, there's a bump in the road, there's a problem. Maybe you get ambushed, maybe you saw it coming, maybe you caused it, maybe somebody else caused it. But you find yourself, you need help. What do? I'm going to give you a couple of practical suggestions on how to get help, where to get help, when you have a problem. I don't care what it is. Any problem, here's where you need to start. I'm in James chapter 4, verse 6. When you need help, here's what you should do. James chapter 4, verse 6. God gives a greater grace. God gives a greater grace. And then James chapter 4, verse 6 says, God is opposed to the proud, but let me reread James 4, 6. God gives a greater grace. God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So if you find yourself in a hard spot, if you find yourself struggling, just recently a man came to me and said he was struggling with pornography. In another situation, a husband and wife, a different situation, came to me and said their marriage was struggling. In another situation, a teenager said they didn't understand the teacher at school. In another situation, a single man said, I don't know how to build friendships. I'm a loner. So let me show you when you need help. Here's what the Bible is saying. James chapter 4, verse 6. God gives greater grace. Number 1, when you need help, look to God. Look to God. Find God. God gives greater grace. Lots of us are simply not finding God. We're not seeking God. We're not searching for God. A lot of us say we believe in God, but some of us say we don't even believe in God. So I'm saying to you, the Bible says God gives greater grace. I'm saying to you, find God. I'm saying to you, there is a God. I'm saying to you, He's not angry, He's not mad, He's not hateful, He's not bitter. I'm saying God gives greater grace. I'm saying this because James chapter 4, verse 6 says this, and James is the brother to Jesus. And watch Jesus, who is God, give greater grace. Now think with me for a moment. Number 2. Not only should you go find God when you need help, number two, remind yourself greater grace with God. Greater grace with God. What does greater grace mean? Well, it just simply means merciful help, mercy help. It means simply greater grace. Grace means a helping hand. Grace means favor. Grace means assistance. Grace means help. God is willing to help you, and His help is great. Why is it that God is willing to be gracious to you? Because God is not mad. God is a merciful God. Greater grace is a statement about the compassion of God, the forgiveness of God, the mercy of God. So I'm going to remind you, when you need help, think greater grace comes from God. You're not going to get much slack. You're not going to get much grace from most people. Most people are going to be demanding. Most people are going to be highly critical. But the verse simply says that God gives greater grace. God gives mercy. So when you mess up, when you fail, the Bible is simply saying God is willing to help you. God is willing to go to the extra mile. God is willing to forgive. God is willing to give you answers that you cannot find. God is willing to help you to a greater degree. As a matter of fact, nobody is more helpful to you than God. Can I suggest number three? God gives a greater grace. What that means is God is willing, number three, to bless you. But you got to seek Him. You got to come to Him. You got to recognize that He's merciful. You have to honor Him. Number three, He's willing to give. He's willing to bless. He's willing to provide. You can't manipulate God. So I'm going to suggest number four, watch your motives. So James chapter 4 verse 6 says God gives greater grace, and then the next phrase is God is opposed to the proud but gives grace to the humble. So number four, don't be arrogant. Your motive for coming to God should not be selfish. It should not be arrogant. It should not be prideful. It should not be narcissistic. Lots of people are trying as hard as they possibly can to find a way to manipulate the system, find a way to deceive. You listen, you cannot deceive God. He sees right through you. God sees the intentions of your heart, the motive of your heart. God knows what's going on inside of you. So watch your motives. God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Number five, here's another suggestion. If you need help, number five, humble. Be humble. Be humble. Forget about controlling. Forget about demanding. Stop being a bully. Stop being a perfectionist. Stop trying to control your life. See, to be humble is not to be prideful. To be humble, according to James 4:6, is to yield to God. So, are you surrendered? Listen, if you need help, God is willing, but can you give to God? Can you surrender? Can you let go of your perfectionist, narcissistic, self-serving arrogance? Lots of people are demanding. Lots of people have mental health issues. Lots of people have financial issues. Lots of people, relationship, marriage. And one of the major factors is this whole concept of my way. My way, not God's way. I want it done my way. So the center of the universe for a lot of people who have problems is themselves. I'm saying God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So be humble. Don't be self-centered. You're not the center of the universe. Everything does not orbit around you. You want it to orbit around you, but it does not. Everything, whether we know it or not, like it or not, everything satellites around the center of the universe, and that's God. God made the rules. He designed the system, and God is willing to give grace, greater grace, if you're willing not to be arrogant, not to be boastful, not to be prideful, be humble. Humble is knowing you're not God. Humble is saying, God created me. Humble is, I will follow God. Humble is, I will surrender. Let me give you another suggestion. I think we're probably on number 6. I'm not quite sure, but I think number 6. And that is, God is opposed to the proud. Now, remember James 4:6. Simple, few words in this verse. God gives greater grace. God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. If you need help, never forget, you don't want God against you. You want God's favor. God is opposed to the proud. We live our lives day to day, and we become anti-God in our attitude, in our behavior. We don't follow God. And the verse is simply saying, when you don't follow God, God is opposed to the proud. That word opposed is opposition. That word opposed is basically you're not on the same side as God. And God is choosing to be on opposite teams. Do you really want to play against God? Do you really want to outmaneuver God? Do you think you have the mental capacity? Do you think you have the skill capacity to somehow battle with God? As a matter of fact, God is opposed to the proud. That word opposed, when you do a word study, that word is strong opposition. You can't defeat God, and you don't want God working against you. You want God working for you. So if you have a problem, if you need help, why not ask God to help you? Be aware that if you're arrogant, if you're narcissistic, if you're not humble, the Bible says God is not going to favor you. This verse is saying God will oppose you. Now, why in the world would anyone want God not supporting them? You would want God to support you. I would want God to support me. You don't want God being in opposition. You don't want God disagreeing with you. You don't want God correcting you. See, opposition is just simply referring to God has a way of disciplining. God has a way of correcting. God has a way of pruning. You're like me. We all need help. Every day of my life, I need help. Don't forget this powerful verse. God gives grace, greater grace. He opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. James chapter 4, verse 6. If you need help, here's exactly how to do it. James chapter 4, verse 6. I would encourage you to go back and listen to this walk and talk. This is walk and talk number 121. It's August 4th. It's in the low 80s or the high 70s. It's just a beautiful day. A lot of cloud coverage. We invite you to come to church this coming Sunday, 8 o'clock, 9:30, and 11, and 11 o'clock, 8, 9:30, 11 in the worship center downstairs, and 11 o'clock upstairs, and 6 p.m. as well. We have a huge invitation to come back to church on August 14th. Vacations will be over. Kids will be back in school. Invite your family, your friends, your neighbors. Come worship with us. We have a lot of different fun activities on Sunday morning, August 14th. Free lunch, barbecue lunch, bouncies, just a whole bunch of positive worship, positive Bible studies, kids programs, youth programs. And on August 14th in the evening, we have a great big gospel concert with the Matinee Brothers. So you're invited. Come back to worship. Come back to church. It's a great day to find God. It's a great day to get help from God. Whatever your situation is, humble yourself. Get on God's team. Get on His team. You don't want Him opposing you. You want His kindness. You want His goodness. You want His blessings. You don't want His opposition. This is Walk and Talk 121. It's a great day. Blessings on you.